you for joining Sertl Optics 360 Pulse. I am your host, Jennifer Sertl, Director of Marketing at Sertl Optics. 360-degree imaging is part of everyday life, and Sertl Optics technology is being designed to accelerate the delivery of life-saving resources, ensure aerospace safety, and increase immersive experience participation. This podcast, 360 Pulse, is dedicated to feature immersive technology and innovators working on these capabilities. Access has been a core value of our team from the very beginning, as we began as a B Corporation to signal our commitment to creating value for our employees, our shareholders, our customers, and ultimately the planet. The Sertl Optics origin story came from our founder, Zach Niazi's curiosity about this one question. If Google has cameras around the world mapping the streets to the planet, why can't you strap a headset and roam around the streets of Italy or walk around the Great Pyramids of Giza in a full 360-degree video and not just static photos? The fundamental problem is 360-degree cameras all have something called stitching, where you basically get these artifacts and distortions in the imagery because every camera has a different perspective in the way they see the world. And when you fuse multiple camera perspectives together, you get artifacts and distortion. At Sertl Optics, we have solved the stitching problem, eliminating thousands of dollars per minute of cost for 360-degree video content. We really believe that our technology will revolutionize the way that people share their experiences. And this is where we align with Loren Penman. Loren is the co-chair and one of the creators of Letchworth Park's Autism Nature Trail. Loren is a native of Stamford, Connecticut, but has called Western New York her home for over 40 years. She spent 4 decades as a teacher and administrator in public schools and led one of the first Pathways in Technology P-Tech high schools in New York State. Loren has been an ESL Credit Union Continental Award winner and a Rochester Athena Award nominee for extensive professionalism and volunteer service. She may be best known as one of the aunts, a title that was given to the 3 women who had created the Autism Nature Trail at Letchworth State Park. April is Autism Acceptance and Advocacy Month, and we're so delighted to have Loren speaking with us today. Let's start with what we know so far and perhaps a bit of the history of autism. Thank you, Loren.
It was in the year 2000, as I was starting the last leg of my career, that I paid attention to the Centers for Disease Control monitoring of the incidence of autism among children in this country. And at that point, the numbers were estimated at 1 in 150 children at age 8. This is a fairly complicated monitoring system that looks at the incidence of autism spectrum disorder diagnoses across the 50 states. Now, 10 years later, that number had gone to 1 in 69. And 10 years after that, in the 2020 monitoring, it is now reported at 1 in 36. So those numbers have had a meteoric rise. And there's lots of theories, but no clear pathway to understanding exactly why, but certainly an awareness that started led to an understanding and acceptance, which has definitely had an impact in the increase in the numbers.
What do you want people to know about autism?
The most important thing is that it is a spectrum. And although there are, and it's diagnosed through symptoms, and those symptoms can vary widely. I think that, as frustrating as it may be, the best thing I've heard is from Dr. Stephen Shore, who is a doctor, an advocate for autism, and also himself on the spectrum, who says, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And those qualifying symptoms can include everything from a difficulty with social skills in particular. That's possibly the most impactful symptom. Speech and language is often compromised, and again, a spectrum from no verbal language to maybe very repetitive language. Make sure sensitivities, sensory sensitivities, and again, they can be hyposensitive or hypersensitive. So you see where the profile can be hugely different depending on the individual. Not so different from any of the rest of us who have differences, but those differences sometimes do not jive with what we consider to be typical. So the term atypical is often used to talk about behavior or characteristics of those on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Can you share a little about the design principles that went into the trail?
We consulted the very top name in autism circles. Dr. Temple Grandin was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. Her parents were advised to institutionalize her for life at the time. She didn't speak until she was about 4, but her mother in particular just was not having any of this institutionalized recommendation. She now, 70 years later, has an earned doctorate in animal science. She's on the faculty at Colorado State University. She's a sought-after consultant of the livestock industry because her expertise is the humane treatment, particularly of beef cattle. And she is probably the best-known autism advocate in the world. And she was not unlike Sertl Optics. We started with the question, what if? And thought, what if there was a place where persons on the spectrum who exhibit many of the symptoms or some of the symptoms and to many different degrees had a safe place to enjoy deep nature that was predictable, that was safe, not only physically, but also emotionally, and that also spoke to some of the things that we heard as we listened to people about what would produce that feeling of calm, of peace, of safety, not only for the person on the spectrum, but for the caretaker, who often is very gun shy about having, particularly a child with autism, out in public for fear of behaviors that are not typical. So Dr. Grandin was excited, not aware of anything quite like what we were proposing with our what if. And she gave us 7 guiding principles for the design, which we held very true to, and which we also share liberally with others who want to produce something like what we were doing at Letchworth State Park. The first thing she said was, don't build a strip mall nature trail. She said that we found this place in deep nature and we should stay there, even though she was certain, and she was right, there would be people who would want us to move it closer to a population like Buffalo or Rochester. She told us to design a pre-walk station before the actual hike to ease visitors into nature. She advised to make the trail a loop so that the end was visible at the beginning. That safety and security was very important. And to make sure that visitors knew they were always safely on the trail. For us, it was a consistent stone dust surface and 38 markers along the way, identical markers, so that you never thought that you were getting lost or off the trail. She said to offer challenges to individuals who may never have been on a hike, never been in the woods, but to always have an opportunity to opt out of the experience if it was getting too intense. She said that meltdowns were going to be predictable with this population, so provide a safe place for them to happen so that at the sign of a meltdown, the visitors caretaker or the visitor didn't feel they had to run out of the woods and head back to the parking lot and go home. And finally, she told us to look for program planners and staff who were autism experts and nature experts. She said not to settle for one or the other, that combination of both would be very important. And we did that.
Wow. Synergy is a core value of ours, and we have experienced a great deal of synergy from you in this opportunity to collaborate. Can you share some of the relationships that came together to build the Nature Trail?
It was remarkable, the kind of advice that we got. Listening became our greatest tool in this, and we talked to the people you might expect, such as physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech and language pathologists, special educators. But we also listened very carefully to parents and grandparents and caretakers. And possibly the most valuable came from young people, young adults, themselves on the spectrum, who told us that that many times decisions are made for them by people who do not identify as being people like them, who are more typical than atypical. And that's where we learned the slogan, nothing about us without us. And that's a fairly common cry among persons with a range of disabilities. But we really stuck to that. We ran things by our intended population and got incredible feedback. So when, for example, we heard a parent say, we've never finished a meal in a restaurant for fear of a meltdown. We've never seen the end of a church service. We've never gotten everything we need at the grocery store in one trip. We knew the importance of having, for example, what we've called alone zones throughout the trail, where if it's getting to the point that a caretaker is nervous, then take a step away. You don't have to leave. You don't have to run away. You don't have to miss the experience, because we've taken that into consideration. And on the trail, you can still be near the trail and yet away from it to chill, to recover, to recoup. And I think that's one of the most unusual and rewarding aspects of the trail that has made it not only special, but really, really useful to families who have never had that chance before, never seen that happen. So, and then in looking for our partners, finding Camp Puzzle Piece of Rochester, who take families who live with some sort of developmental disability. That's the qualification, one member of the family. But the whole family goes wilderness camping in the Adirondacks for 3 or 4 nights every summer in a couple of different sessions. And these are families who come to Camp Puzzle Piece and say, I can't get my kid in the car to go to Wegmans, and you want me to take them to the Adirondacks? He can't do that, or she can't do that. And the answer is always, he or she can't do it yet. Mm-hmm. And those are the people we wanted working on the trail and working on programming for special weekend themes that happen on the trail from the beginning of May until the end of October. And then we found in another partner, the Perry Central School District, where the superintendent and teachers and Board of Education members saw the power of a resource like this in their backyard. And they signed on. They maintained the trail for us. They've hired a sensory destination coordinator who is working with the businesses in Perry to become ant-friendly. We call it, the Autism Nature Trail's abbreviation is ANT, A-N-T. And we have ant-friendly certified businesses who have developed an understanding of how clients with sensory sensitivities may not react well to their music in the background, their fluorescent lighting, their high their high reliance on spoken language or written language. So, for instance, the Butter Meat Company in Perry is our first ant-friendly certified business. And they changed the background noise. They changed the lighting. They have fidget toys in a basket for children to engage in if parents are shopping. They have a picture menu. So if you don't have the language to ask for something, you can point to what you want. And they've trained their staff to be aware of a neurodiverse population that may be coming into the store. And this is not only local people, but tourists, visitors.
Yeah.
We're going to be attracting a different kind of visitor to the area. And through the Perry Central School District, the entire community has really welcomed this inclusive environment.
Wow. You had talked about that the neatest thing was that it ends up impacting other people in a positive way. Can you talk more about how we've all benefited from these adjustments?
That came to light for me in remembering the American with Disabilities Act of 1990. And one of the provisions was a change to the built environment, lots of things about ramps and access to second floor public buildings, for example. But there was an element where curbs needed to be cut at major intersections to allow wheelchairs to get from one side of the street to the other. And I remember in my own environment at the time, hearing some grousing about it. We don't have that many people in wheelchairs. What do we need all this reconstruction for? In fact, the unintended effect was everybody liked it. Mothers with strollers, skateboarders and bicyclists. And then when those people had accidents and were on crutches, they enjoyed it. Senior citizens with walkers, workers with carts, travelers with wheeled luggage, even musicians with large instruments or artists with portfolios. Everybody took advantage of these cut curbs. And Stanford University did a study called the curb cut effect. And that now is something we refer to about the entire trail. It turns out that what's good for an underserved population, generally speaking, it turns out to be pretty good for everybody. And that is what we have found along the ant.
There has been a rise in respect for neurodiversity. And can you share a little bit about where you see it going and how your expertise will be used?
I think that when high quality planning and services, and again, this nothing about us without us, is applied, that respect follows automatically. One of the things that was important to us was having a top shelf facility with the trail to make it extremely high quality in Letchworth State Park, voted the #1 state park in the country back in 2015. It needed to not be an afterthought. And even more importantly, I think it was starting with a clean slate and not trying to fidget with something that was already in existence to try to create a new product. And we like to say that while other people are retrofitting public places to make them accessible, we created an accessible place and made it public. And that really has made all the difference.
I want to thank all of you joining us today. We'd like to thank the Institute of Optics, Genius New York, Luminate Accelerator, AFWorks, Cider Technologies, Archangel Imaging, and AUVSI. Special mention to our producer, Scott Fitzgerald at Rock Fox Studios in the heart of optics expertise in Rochester, New York. By all means, I hope you listen and subscribe to our program. Find us on Twitter and LinkedIn. We are so interested in how immersive technology positively impacts safety and human connection. And if you know a story we should feature or a guest that can further this conversation, let me know. You can reach me at jennifer@sertleoptics.com. Thank you for joining us.